Welcome to StallSide Podcast.
How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, Peter?
I'm very well, thank you. Interesting take on what we're doing today.
Yeah, we're going to divert just a little bit from what we normally do. Our industry is about people. We deal with animals, but it's mostly about people. And one of the interesting and great men in the industry recently passed, my friend John Hall. He's left a hole. And I wanted to take a moment, talk about him, and reminisce a little bit and honor him a little bit today.
I think that's great. Yeah, John Hall was very good to me when I first got to this town. I mean, it's a difficult area to break into when you come from the outside. And he treated me like I was a long-lost friend. He was a total gentleman. He was respectful. He took everything on board that I suggested. And he showed me a lot about how to treat people in this town and make relationships.
Yep. And if you ever walked across Keeneland or somewhere like that with John, everybody knew him. Everybody knew him. Everybody was so glad to see him come. He was a very special person.
Yeah. So who have we got coming in today to actually talk about John?
So we're going to bring Mark Taylor. He's vice president at TaylorMade Sales, and wanted to have him. He and John have a long relationship. John worked at TaylorMade for several years, and Mark knows him very well. So thought we'd bring him in and have Mark talk about John a little bit.
Yeah, that'll be great. So let's get on with the podcast.
Why the podcast? Rood and Riddle Veterinary Pharmacy has a relatively small marketing budget, especially when you compare us with our competitors. I understand that marketing is important, but telling people that you exist and what you do and why your products or services are different is a must. I thought about what makes us unique, and I realized I wanted to give people something of real value. That's how the podcast idea evolved. I wanted to use the money we had set aside for marketing, not to tell people who we are, but rather to show them, to open up how we do things and give something of value at the same time. The content of this podcast is designed to do exactly that. It's not going to serve as a shameless plug for pharmacy products or services. We want you to know who we are, that quality is uncompromised, that we care about people and their animals. If there are specific topics that you would like us to cover or guests that you would like to hear from, please email us at stallside@rrvp.com. Hope you enjoy the show. Just one more note, nothing that we talk about here today should be construed as veterinary advice. That's why you have a relationship with your own veterinarian. Thank you for listening.
Mark, welcome to StallSide.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Today, a little bit different. We're going to actually honor one of the real personalities and gentlemen of the horse industry who has recently passed. But just to start off with, Mark, tell us a little bit about TaylorMade Farm. It's fairly unique in the industry. It's a family-run operation. And, just give us a little bit of background.
Okay, so there's four of us brothers that all are partners in TaylorMade, and then Pat Payne he's kind of like our fifth brother. We all grew up together and went to the same grade school, high school, and Pat has always been kind of an extended part of the family. My dad, just quick background on him, he was originally from Frankfort, Kentucky, started out in the standardbred business with a guy named Clarence Gaines, and Clarence Gaines was the biggest player in the standardbred game, I would say, back in the 60s, and then his son John Gaines branched off into thoroughbreds. So my dad went with John, and that became Gainesway Farm as we know it today. And of course, Mr. Gaines was a visionary type guy. He came up with the concept of the Kentucky Horse Park. He came up with the concept of the Breeders' Cup, the NTRA, very visionary type person. And so my dad was kind of his right-hand person. It was more of the horseman of the operation. They developed a stallion roster. At one point they had, I think, 56 stallions, and it was the first stallion farm that had ever had two breeding sheds running simultaneously. It was really a lot of pioneering type stuff. So my brothers and I kind of grew up in that, were incubated in that just real innovative atmosphere, and kind of lit an entrepreneurial spark in my brother Duncan. So in 1976, while he was still going to the University of Kentucky, He leased a farm and started just boarding mares. And the plan was kind of set in place with my dad as the mentor, even though my dad never owned part of TaylorMade, that Duncan would be the sole proprietor. But then as the other brothers got out of school, we would have the opportunity to join in, and my dad helped lay the framework for it. And, nobody ever even knew that it would make it past a couple years, much less, we're at, coming up on 45 years pretty soon. So, but at this point today, we're full scale. We got stallions. We obviously sell a lot of horses for our customers at public auction. We have a large boarding operation. We do a lot of private sales transactions, and we actually have a new partnership pillar of our business where we're bringing new people into the game to experience pinhooking and also racing. So we've got our medallion racing product and our bloodstock investments, which is more of a way to invest in all parts of the bloodstock industry and resell. So that's a Breeder's Digest version, but that's kind of what TaylorMade's all about.
Good. And so, as I mentioned at the start, we're here today to talk about John Hall. So talk about your association with John.
Okay, so when I was still in like early grade school, probably in, I don't know, maybe 1977, 78, somewhere around there, I can remember this guy, John Hall, coming in for the sales, and everybody would get excited out. John Hall's coming in for the sales. And he was friends with Mike Shannon, who was my brother Duncan's partner at the time. He was friends with my brother Duncan, and just everybody knew this guy, John Hall, very charismatic, fun guy that would come in. And he actually was probably the biggest agent in New England. He had a lot of, legitimate buyers. He would buy, quality horses, but they were mainly going up to run in the New England circuit, which back in those days was a very viable, prospering, racing circuit in the United States. So that's how we got to know him. And so John, as the business started to go down, there was a lot of political changes, a lot of things happened in New England. And we can touch base about this later, but John, through the first part of his family was into horses. His dad was a very famous horseman in New England, was considered the best judge of a horse in New England. He was just renowned for judging horse shows. He was renowned for their operation they ran on their farm. But when John's dad died, the economic climate there was going downhill, and John actually developed an alcohol problem and really kind of bottomed out. His barn burned down. He ended up having a broken back. He was really in bad financial shape, and he was dealing with an alcohol situation. Wife left him, so he's basically down on the mat. But this is what sets the stage for really the John Hall that we came to know and love, is that his story was one of just resilience and courage and just, turning his life around and helping so many more people. So I don't want to do all the talking here, but John finally, he reached out to us in the late 90s, probably, I'm thinking it was around 98, and said, hey, I've been through all this. I was on the top of the mountain. Now I'm at the bottom of the mountain. I just want to explore the possibility of coming to Kentucky. Would you have a spot? So we found a spot for him, and it turned out to be one of the best business moves we ever made, because he really was a huge influence on our whole operation.
You mentioned about mentorship, and that's really important in the industry, seeing people grow. Do you have any examples of how John helped people through their careers?
Oh man, there's so many that it's hard to even count. Like, since he's passed away, I mean, my phone has just exploded with people reaching out and offering their, just stories about John and how he helped them in their life. But for many years, we actually had a formal intern program where young people from all over the country and all over the world would come here and spend 18 months, and we would do our very best to turn them into horsemen. We had an educational piece to it, but a lot of it was hands-on. And John Hall was really, he sunk his heart and soul into that because he wanted to help these young people. from all over the place. When I was working hand in hand with John out there in the late 90s, I mean, it was just like an international affair. We had guys from Trinidad and South Africa, from England, Ireland, Australia, Brazil. We had guys and girls from all over the place. And John Hall, he was tough on them. John Hall was like this loving mentor, but he also was a guy that was a little bit of a taskmaster, and he didn't have a lot of, if somebody came in there and they were soft and they didn't want to work, he was going to try to convert them to learn work ethic first. Even if you didn't have a lot of talent, natural talent around the horses, if you were willing to work and learn, he was your greatest advocate. But if you came in and you had an entitled attitude, you didn't want to work, you were either going to convert or hit the road. So he had a lot more conversion stories than hitting the road stories, and I think those people really owe a debt of gratitude, and that's what they've been expressing. Over the last week, is just how big of an impact he had on them in their future endeavors.
But it's interesting you mentioned that, because he could get on somebody and yell at them, but at the same time, they knew it was out of love. And people were not offended by that, where it was always amazing to me. He could say things to people and just be so straightforward. But people it didn't hurt their feelings, because they knew it was coming from a genuine spot with John.
Yeah, that was a great talent. I just wrote down some words here that I thought kind of represented who he was for people who may not have gotten to know him. Is I just put, he was a champion of the underdog. So, a lot of times at TaylorMade, we're trying to run a business, and we got to watch the bottom line. And sometimes you get disconnected from the people in the trenches. But if there was ever anybody in the trenches that had a problem, a personal problem, or bad luck had hit them, or they needed a hand up, or they needed a little extra money to get by, he was their advocate. And he would come in, and my brother Duncan, sometimes we'd be in a meeting and you see John coming up through the parking lot heading the opposite and go, here it goes. I don't know who he's trying to get us to bail out, but somebody. And that was what he was all about. He was all about helping people that needed it. He was a continuous learner. When John Hall came down here, I'm guessing that he was probably in his late 50s. And, I was his boss for a while. And I told him right off the bat, I was like, listen, I'm the boss because, I'm going to be doing these certain things, but you're my mentor, and you know more than I do. So I need to learn from you. And he was so great about that. He would always support me, have my back when I needed him to. But then at the same time, if I was making a mistake or doing something stupid around a horse, he would coach me up, but not in a demeaning way. And I learned a tremendous amount from him. It was really just a privilege that he came along at that time, because he just made me a much better person, just how you deal with people, how you deal with horses. And that was the other thing for people. It's a Rood and Riddle podcast. I know there's a lot of horse lovers, animal lovers on here, and he really loved the horses too. The one thing that was a cardinal sin, if somebody was going to try to abuse a horse, get rough with a horse, smack a horse, it's one thing to discipline the horse in a constructive way. But if there was somebody that ever even thought about getting abusive, he had zero tolerance for it. And he really he cared about the animal so much, which, just showed every day watching him work.
You talked about mentorship, and Mark alluded to it there, but he was a mentor to me. I know he was a mentor to you, and I think of the influence that he had on all of the veterinarians that have gone through there, and not only that, but the kids whose last names are Taylor. Because you guys, you mentioned the four brothers, every one of you guys have turned kids over to John and asked to for him to spend time with them, and they've turned out great.
There's a great picture that my nephew Marshall found this week, and there was this one colt we sold up at Saratoga. I think it brought $3.3 million. And so there's a picture. My nephew Marshall was probably like 15. He was a freshman in high school. And he said he got his dad to drive him out to the barn the morning that the horses were shipping to Saratoga, and he got a picture of him and John Hall with this horse because they knew this horse was going to sell really big, and you can just see it. I mean, John Hall, it is the one picture tells the story of how he mentored these kids. He got them to be passionate about these horses and to really get fired up about whatever their little role was. If they were just in there helping groom or whatever, he would always tie that to, hey, if you do your piece of the puzzle right, you're going to play a role in a big time success that could happen down the road. So I think he had this ability to help everybody know that their role with the horse was very valuable. And so they took pride in what they did instead of just trying to pound on people and just be a total taskmaster. He would say, hey, if you do this right, it's going to put us in a position to get really lucky for the customer at the sale, or this horse is going to get through this injury and maybe it's going to be a great racehorse or whatever. But if you don't do it right, the opposite could happen. So he helped connect people at the lowest level doing the fundamental stuff with the horses with the big picture, probably better than anybody I've ever been around. And it was great. It was just a great way to motivate people to care about what they were doing.
Yeah.
I know this is it's a difficult town to come into, and I remember my first experience with John very well. And I was coming to a situation where this weanling had had a few medical issues, and I was going out to see it on the farm, and I was somebody new. And John welcomed me onto the farm. I mean, it was like he'd always known me. He was respectful of my opinions, and I was maybe talking a bit of a different language than he was used to hearing, or approaching the problem in a different way. But he let me play it out and do my thing. And you talk about mentorship. Well, that gave me a lot of confidence to deal with other people in this town, because it is a bit of a pressure cook around here. I mean, standards are very high. And coming in from the outside, he taught me a lot about how to deal with people in the industry in this town. And so it was just like a very subtle thing that he did, but it's paid huge dividends to me for years.
Well, that's a great story, and that goes back to the continuous learning part of it. Also, that in his later years, it wasn't so many people at some point in their life just determined, okay, I'm now the expert and I don't need to learn anything else. But he was always trying to absorb just the situation you just described. He was always, if a new person came in, he was willing to see what they could bring to the table that was different, and he kept adding to his toolbox, so to speak, different philosophies and approaches to things. And he was, it was just great that way. I mean, just throughout his whole life, and he was very humble, for a guy who knew so much about horses and people. He was also very, just willing. He didn't want to always hog the limelight. He would let other people have that, and he would just play his role. And just so many life lessons that I learned from him, and I think a lot of other people did too. And the other thing he could do, which your story kind of reminded me of this, is, like you say, the sales for us are a big pressure cooker. We've got all of our customers' horses there, where, in a lot of cases, it's been a 2-year process between the breeding, the matings, the, getting the babies born, raising them up, and you get them there. And when things aren't going just right, between buyers coming to the consignment, and maybe they're in a hurry and they're grumpy and they're tired and they're in a bad mood, and then your client's there and they've just gotten some bad news that their horse, Bart's failed the scope, or whatever might have happened. So it's a very tense environment. And sometimes I feel myself getting caught up in that, and I'm just a ball of tense, just not very happy. And John could just diffuse it. He would laugh. He'd get that big, like, New England laugh and slap somebody on the back and be like, lighten up, it's okay, or whatever. And he could, there were some really grouchy, grumpy people at the sales that I would hate to see coming. But if John was there, he would get them laughing and change the dynamic of the whole thing, or he'd kind of give it back to him, a little shtick back to him. So he was a great diplomat in that way too. And he could deal with anybody from, John Magner all the way down to the guy sweeping out the bathrooms over there, and treat them all as equals and respected people, which is another great attribute he had.
Yeah, he was very, and that's what I remember the most, is he was just not a respecter of, everybody was the same to John. He loved everybody, and he was kind to everybody, and I never saw him mistreat a single person in my life. So, and I remember his fascination with Tom Brady. He had this odd fascination with Tom Brady. He was a New England Patriots
Tom Brady's
fan.
Pretty good.
I guess if you're going to have a man crush, that's
the one. We could call it that. Yeah. But
he loved to have fun.
Patriots.
Yeah, he just absolutely loved to have fun on the farm. He was always putting together poker games or golf matches, or we were betting on sports games. He just loved to have fun. He was laughing all the time.
He's obviously given us all a lot. How best do you think we could honor his legacy going forward?
Well, I mean, we've been talking about here at TaylorMade, what can we do that would be appropriate, something that we could create, whether it's a scholarship or something for somebody to come have an internship at TaylorMade and they learn about John and his impact. But I think just in general, for anybody that knew John, what can they do? I think it's just to go out and love your animals, love your horses, take care of them the best you possibly can, put them first, and then, just try to be kind to your fellow human being. I mean, he was, he was a very Christian person. He was a devout Catholic, and there's a lot of people that, they might go to church a lot, or they might do whatever, but he was one of the few people that jumps out at me as just being 100% authentic, like just those core principles of the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. He just seemed to naturally, in a very he was never preaching. He led by example, and his actions did all the speaking. So, I think that's what we could do, is just be better to one another as people and try to be better to our horses and our animals. And that's the best, it's the best legacy that John Hall could help us keep going.
I think the world needs a little bit more of that right now.
Yeah, I agree. So, Mark, I've had a lot of people ask me, is there plans to do a memorial here in Lexington for John?
Yes. So I would just stay tuned, to, TaylorMade will get the word out through social media or through our website. And I think Fasig-Tipton will probably help us do this. What we're in the process of organizing is we thought during the July sale, because a lot of the people who knew John, loved John, will be in town. And that sale's not so hectic and crazy like trying to do it during September. So I think we're going to have a memorial service at Fasig-Tipton probably on July 10th, right after we get done showing for the day, like at 5 o'clock. We haven't worked out all the details of that. There's going to be a funeral mass coming up in June up in New England also. But for all those friends in Lexington, we're definitely going to do something right around the July sale time.
Okay, that's great. Appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on here today. I mean, it's a great tribute to John, and I'm, unfortunately, I'm not a podcast expert, but I want to start listening to you guys on a regular basis. I think it's great, just way to stay informed and learn about some new stuff that's going on.
Well, yeah, listen in if you've got any suggestions. We're all ears as always, so appreciate it. So.
Yeah. Mark, thanks for your time, and thanks for your insight into John Hall. We're all going to miss him, and I think we're all very much better for having known him, and I think we should all take on a bit of his philosophy on life and how people treat each other, and we'll all be better for it.
Yep, I agree.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, that's great.
All right.
Well, again, thanks to Mark Taylor from TaylorMade, and that's StallSide. I hope you enjoyed the program. Look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. Have a great day, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Rood
Rood and Riddle Veterinary Pharmacy is a full-service veterinary pharmacy located in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky, the horse capital of the world. We are the official pharmacy of nationally recognized organizations like the Breeders' Cup, the National Horse Show, and the United States Hunter-Jumper Association. As a full-service veterinary-only pharmacy, we offer a multitude of options in care of your patients, giving you and your clients a little peace of mind in uncertain times.